Snow warning. That's what my phone screamed at 3:02 a.m., like the weather was trying to protect me from something. Turns out, the ice wasn't the problem. Right under the banner was a doorbell alert. Motion at my front door. A snapshot popped up. Fuzzy slippers, white, plush, standing on my porch like they paid property taxes. They weren't mine. And unless my husband had secretly grown a second pair of feet, they weren't his either. If I handled this wrong, I'd lose my house before I even lost my marriage. Mark was snoring behind me, one hand on my side like he still owned the right to touch me. Earlier he'd said, "I'm exhausted, I'll be out cold." And technically he was, just not in the way loyal men are out cold. If I did the usual thing, shake him awake, demand answers, I already knew the routine. He'd call me paranoid. He'd say I was stressed. He'd speak slowly, like I was the problem. So I didn't give him a scene. I gave myself a record. I saved the alert, saved the snapshot, requested the clip. Then I opened the lock history because doors don't gaslight, doors log. There it was, my front door unlocked and locked again in the same window those slippers appeared. User Mark, clarity hit first, the kind that makes your stomach drop and your posture straighten. I slipped out of bed and walked to the entryway barefoot. The doormat was damp. Fresh snow dusted the porch, and tiny footprints glittered under the light like a confession. Snow is honest, it doesn't misremember. It just sits there and says, "Ma'am, someone was here." I photographed the prints. Then I opened my banking app. A grocery charge from yesterday stared back at me. Same upscale store, same total. A number I remembered because I'd paid it with a smile. It had been a normal Tuesday evening in Chicago. I was at self-checkout when I noticed her. Early 30s, pretty, panicking quietly while her card declined. She looked at me like I was the last lifeboat. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I thought I moved money. I don't know what happened." I should have kept walking. But I'm 58. And I've spent years being called cold just because I don't perform feelings on demand. Sometimes I overcorrect, so I paid her groceries. She thanked me too much. Offered to pay me back. I declined. She smiled, small, satisfied, like I'd given her exactly what she came for. Back in my kitchen, I pulled up the digital receipt I'd emailed myself out of habit. At the bottom was a line I hadn't noticed. Digital copy sent to Tessa.L. Tessa. Of course her name was Tessa. Names like that show up with mascara, soft apologies, and a talent for looking harmless under fluorescent light. I looked at the porch snapshot again. Then at Mark, asleep like consequences were a rumor. And I understood. The girl at the grocery store wasn't random. She was a delivery method. I created a folder on my phone and named it, one word, house. Not feelings, not marriage, just the asset my husband was about to misunderstand. Then I sat at my kitchen island listening to the wind hit the windows, and I made myself a promise. By morning, Mark wouldn't be explaining where he'd been. By morning, I'd be deciding who still had the right to walk through my front door. The next morning, the snow looked beautiful in that insulting way tragedies sometimes do, sparkling, peaceful, pretending nothing happened at 3:02 a.m. Mark made coffee like a man with a clean conscience. He even kissed my cheek. A soft little peck, as if affection was a stamp that made everything legal. "Crazy storm," he said, glancing at the window. "You sleep okay?" I smiled back with the calm of a woman holding a grenade with the pin already out. "Like a baby," I said. Which was technically true. Babies wake up screaming and suspicious. He laughed, too easy. Then he started talking about the day ahead. Meetings, deadlines, the usual soundtrack of a life where I apparently existed as background music. I waited until he was in the shower before I opened the doorbell footage. The clip started with wind and snow and the porch light turning the world into a grainy confession. Then, there they were again. The fuzzy slippers. They stepped into frame like they owned the place. A second later, Mark appeared behind them, hood up, shoulders hunched, moving fast but not panicked. That detail mattered. He wasn't startled. He was practiced. He leaned toward the camera's blind spot, and I couldn't hear everything, just the shape of words. A soft laugh, a whisper. Then the door opened. My door. The footage ended before I saw a face, which felt like a cruel joke written by someone who enjoyed suspense. But I didn't need a face. I had the timing, the movement, the body language of a man who'd done this before. I saved the clip. Then I pulled up the lock activity again and scrolled the entries like I was reading a stranger's diary. In the middle of the night log, I noticed something I hadn't caught earlier. A new access code had been created a few days ago. Not mine, not his usual. The label was almost funny. HVAC. Right, because nothing says romance like climate control. I laughed quietly to myself. One sharp, private sound. Mark had handed out a key to my home and named it after a household appliance. That was his idea of subtle. That was also his idea of respect. I took screenshots. Then I did what I always do when something doesn't make sense. I pulled the thread until it bled truth. The new scarf I'd seen on the hook was still there, tag still attached. I lifted it gently like it might bite. The little handwritten note, so cute. Personal. And so unbelievably stupid it almost made me nostalgic. Men used to hide affairs with hotel receipts and shaky alibis. Now they hung souvenirs in the mudroom like seasonal decor. I set the scarf back exactly as I found it. Because the first rule of catching someone is this: don't rearrange the crime scene when you're still collecting fingerprints. Mark came out of the shower smelling like soap and denial. He checked his phone, frowned, then smoothed his expression the way you smooth a wrinkle in a shirt. "Everything okay?" I asked, light as air. "Yeah," he said too quickly. "Just work. The modern excuse that covers everything from layoffs to lies." He left for the day with his travel mug and his confident stride, like the house would still belong to him by dinner. I watched his car disappear into the white blur of the storm, and I didn't feel rage. I felt focus. I sat at my kitchen island with my laptop open, my phone beside it, and my evidence folder staring back at me like a patient little witness. Then a new message popped up. Unknown number. "You don't know me, but I know who you are. Your husband is seeing Tessa. Before you do anything loud, you should see what I have." I read it twice because I'm not the type to panic. I'm the type to verify. I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came immediately. "Ryan, Tessa's boyfriend. And don't worry, I'm not texting out of kindness." There it was. Honesty. Rare. Almost refreshing. A second message followed. "She lies to everyone, including me. But I'm not stupid, I'm just flexible. If you want proof, we can help each other." Then he sent a photo, not of a face, he was careful, but I recognized the setting, a mirror selfie in what looked like a hotel hallway. The lighting was warm, expensive, and in the bottom of the frame like a signature were those fuzzy slippers. My porch slippers. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like it hit the tiled floor. I stared at the photo, then at the snow warning still sitting at the top of my screen like the universe's caption. I typed slowly because I wanted him to understand the rules of talking to me. "What do you want, Ryan?" His answer came with the confidence of a man who thought rich women were vending machines. "Money. Not crazy money, just fair. And I want to make sure she doesn't walk away with the big prize." The big prize. He didn't mean Mark. He didn't mean love. He didn't mean loyalty. He meant my life, my house, my stability. And that was the moment I understood exactly what kind of story I was in. This wasn't a heartbreak story. This was a property dispute with mascara. I leaned back in my chair and smiled, small, cold, precise, because if Ryan thought he was about to hustle me, he had no idea who he'd just messaged. I typed one final line. "Meet me today. Public place. Daylight. Bring what you have. And Ryan, if you waste my time, I'll make sure you waste yours." Outside, the storm kept falling like innocent snow. Inside, I opened a new document and started a list of every door, every code, every receipt, every lie. Mark thought the fuzzy slippers were the secret. He didn't realize the real secret was me. Waiting. I picked a glass-walled cafe downtown for one reason. Daylight makes liars sweat. I still had last night's snow warning banner burned into my screen, and the grocery receipt from Tuesday sitting in my email like an unpaid bill. Ryan was already there. Hoodie, jittery knee, eyes scanning the room like he expected trouble to walk in wearing heels. "You're Evelyn," he said, sliding his phone across the table. "And you're the boyfriend," I said, setting my phone beside my espresso. "You said you had proof." "I do," he replied, "and I'm not doing this for free." "Good," I said. "Charity usually comes with hidden fees." He turned the screen toward me. A message thread, dates, timestamps, the kind of casual cruelty that reads like small talk until it's about you. "Tessa. You're sure she doesn't check the logs? Mark, she never looks, she likes believing me." I didn't gasp, I didn't blink. I took a sip like this was a quarterly report. "Next," I said. Ryan scrolled. A photo loaded. My mudroom wall from inside my house. In the corner, white fuzzy slippers sat on my floor like a trophy. Tessa, easy. Your wife is asleep. Mark, in and out. Don't leave anything. My stomach dropped, but my face stayed expensive. You kept this, I said. Ryan shrugged. I'm not stupid. I just like money. At least you're honest, I said. It's refreshing, like frostbite. He opened a folder of screenshots and photos, a hotel confirmation under Mark's name. A blurred shot of an envelope with my last name and a return address from a local lending office. The kind of envelope that never arrives when a marriage is healthy. Where'd that come from? I asked. Tessa's car, he said. She likes souvenirs. He likes paperwork. I photographed his screen. Slow, steady. Evidence doesn't like panic. Then he leaned in. She told me you're rich. She told Mark the house is basically his. He's been promising her big things. Men love promising women lives they didn't build, I said. Ryan's mouth twitched like he wanted to laugh but didn't want to lose the upper hand. So what now? Now you tell me what you want, I said. $5,000, he said quickly. I stared at him a beat. For screenshots and confidence? For saving your house? I smiled. Small, cold. Ryan, my house doesn't need saving. My husband does, from himself. His knee stopped bouncing. I'll pay for verified originals, I continued. And I'll do it clean. You send me the source files. You don't warn her. You don't delete anything. If this ever ends up in front of a judge, I need you to be useful, not dramatic. He swallowed. This is serious. It got serious when Mark opened my door at 3:02 a.m., I said. That's not romance. That's liability. Ryan nodded once. Fine, but I want her to lose, not walk away smiling. She will, I said, because I don't scream, I file. He slid one last screenshot toward me. A message from Mark to Tessa, sent after midnight a week ago. Mark, appraisal is Thursday. After that, we're free. Attached beneath it was a calendar invite. Subject: Home Value Review, Evelyn Hart. My name, my address, my life, packaged as a plan. Send me that, I said. He did, and right then, as if the universe loved timing, my phone buzzed with a new email notification. Subject: Your request has been received. From a lending office. I didn't open it yet. I didn't need to, because the fuzzy slippers weren't just an insult on my porch. They were a timeline. And that timeline was heading straight for my deed. I opened the lender's email like you open a suspicious container in the fridge. Slow, already annoyed. Subject: Your request has been received. It thanked me for submitting an application and listed a Thursday morning home value review. My address sat there like a dare. The contact name wasn't mine. Mark. I dropped it into my house folder and called the number at the bottom. Hold music played, cheerful, weightless, like betrayal wearing cologne. When the rep answered, I stayed calm. Calm makes people helpful. I'm calling about an application tied to my address, I said. I didn't request it. Keyboard clicks. I do see a request in progress, she said. Started online. Whose name? I asked. Mark Hart. And the borrower? A pause. You, ma'am, but the email on file is different. Tessa, I said, another pause, heavier. Yes. The snow warning still glowed at the top of my screen, and something in me went quiet. This wasn't romance. This was paperwork with teeth. Put a hold on it, I said. Nothing moves without my authorization. Email me confirmation today. Yes, ma'am, she said. We'll send a fraud statement. I texted Ryan. Originals, he replied instantly. Deposit. Even my allies came with price tags. I sent a small amount, enough to keep him talking. 2 minutes later, files arrived, the full message thread, the hotel hallway photo, and something new, an audio clip. Mark's voice, low and smug. Thursday's appraisal. After that, we're set. She won't even know. I saved it. Then I laughed once, sharp, because the audacity was almost impressive. By noon, I was in June's office. June didn't ask how I was. She asked, what do we have? I laid it out. Doorbell clip, lock log, the grocery receipt showing Tessa's email, the lender email, Mark's voice. June pulled up the deed record and turned the screen toward me. The owner wasn't Mark. It wasn't even me, technically. It was my family trust. My father's way of saying love is lovely, but paperwork pays the bills. June tapped the screen. He can apply all he wants. He can't sign what he doesn't own. Relief tried to soften me. I didn't let it. Relief makes you sloppy. We document the attempt, June said. We stop the lender, and we prepare your exit. She drafted a formal hold request to the lender and a letter to Mark we wouldn't send yet. Not until you want the moment, she said. Before I left, she added, change your access codes tonight, quietly. In my car, I opened the smart lock app and removed Mark's admin privileges. I didn't erase him completely, just enough to keep him confident. Then I created a temporary code for myself. I named it Snow. If he wanted to bring a storm into my home, he could learn to respect the forecast. That evening, Mark came in shaking snow from his coat, acting like the day had simply happened to him. "Long day," he sighed. I looked up from my laptop and gave him the kind of smile that makes liars comfortable. "Same," I said. He didn't notice the hold I'd placed on his Thursday plan. He didn't notice the evidence folder growing teeth. He didn't notice the way I'd stopped asking questions. Men like Mark only notice a woman when she begs or breaks. I did neither. I waited, while the snow fell soft and quiet outside, covering tracks he thought no one would ever see. The next morning, my doorbell camera gave me a sequel. Wind, snow, porch light like a spotlight. And there, right on my front step, those fuzzy slippers again, planted like they belonged to the deed. Behind them stood Tessa, wrapped in a coat that looked expensive enough to have a therapist. She shifted her weight, impatient, like my house was late for her. Then Mark appeared in frame, fast and confident, the way men walk when they think the world is still arranged for them. He leaned in close to her, too close, mouthed something I couldn't hear. She nodded, and then he reached for the keypad. Not his usual code. The one he'd labeled HVAC, like betrayal was a home improvement project. I watched his gloved fingers tap, watched him wait. Nothing. He tried again faster, nothing. His shoulders tightened. Tessa looked down at her slippers like the shoes had betrayed her, which was honestly relatable. I didn't open the door. I sat at my kitchen island with coffee I didn't drink, watching them through my phone like a woman streaming the end of a bad marriage. Because the truth was, I'd been waiting for this. The night before, Mark had been almost cheerful, too cheerful. He mentioned Thursday like it was a holiday. "Appraisals tomorrow," he said, spooning pasta onto his plate. "It'll be quick, just routine." Routine. That word men use when they want you to stop asking questions. I nodded, slow, agreeable, the way I used to nod when his mother explained that I was lucky Mark married me. I learned long ago that silence isn't weakness, it's a holding pattern. "Do you need anything from me?" I asked sweetly. Mark relaxed. "No, just keep the place tidy, you know how these things are." Oh, I knew. After he went to bed, I opened my laptop and pulled up the lender's confirmation email, the one that proved the Thursday plan was already frozen. Hold placed. Fraud statement in process. No access without borrower authorization. I saved it. Then I forwarded it to June. Then I forwarded it to a second inbox Mark didn't know I had, because privacy is sexy at 58. Next, I messaged Ryan, "I need originals plus the code label screenshot. Tonight." His reply came instantly. "Payment." Of course it did. I sent what we'd agreed through a clean invoice because I refused to get hustled with my own money. 2 minutes later, the files arrived, screenshots showing Tessa sending Mark step-by-step instructions, including one line that made me laugh out loud in my quiet kitchen. "Tessa, name it HVAC. She'll never suspect." Sweetheart, I suspected the moment fuzzy slippers showed up on my porch in a snowstorm. I'm not naive. I'm just civilized. Before dawn, June emailed me a draft notice for exclusive possession and a separate letter to the lender. Everything neat, legal, and sharp, like a blade that had been polished, not swung. Then I did the last thing Mark never expected from me. I made a call to the appraisal office. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse. I simply said, "I'm the homeowner, there's a fraud hold. Any appointment tied to my address is canceled unless I confirm it personally." The receptionist went quiet the way people go quiet when they realize they're standing too close to a mess. "Understood," she said. "We'll note the file." I thanked her like we were discussing weather. Then I opened my smart lock app and removed the HVC code. Not dramatically. Not with fireworks. Just gone. If Mark wanted to run a scam through my front door, he could learn what it felt like when the door stopped recognizing him. Now, on my porch, he tapped the dead keypad again. Tessa shifted, annoyed, hugging herself. Mark pulled out his phone and called me. I let it ring. He called again. I watched him on camera while my phone vibrated on the counter like a tiny, furious insect. Finally, he texted, "Door isn't working. Are you home?" I typed back one sentence, "Snow warning. Try honesty." Through the camera, I saw his face tighten that split second when a man realizes the ground under him isn't solid anymore. Tessa leaned in, saying something sharp. Mark lifted a hand, calming her, the way men soothe women they think they're managing. Then he did something that made my stomach go cold in a new way. He looked up, directly at the doorbell camera, not confused. Not surprised. Angry. Like the house had wronged him. And that's when the real comedy of it hit me. Mark didn't feel guilty. He felt inconvenienced. I sipped my coffee at last, tasting bitterness like it was a familiar language, and I saved the clip. Because when Mark lost this house, I wanted one last souvenir. Not a scarf, not a note. A timestamp moment of a man realizing he couldn't unlock what he never truly owned. The snow kept falling like it was paid to be innocent. My phone still wore that smug little banner, snow warning, and beneath it, my doorbell app kept delivering updates like a gossip with receipts. Mark didn't come back alone this time. Around mid-morning, the camera caught him on my porch again, coat zipped to his chin, jaw tight, doing that reasonable husband posture he loved. Beside him stood a man with a tool bag and an apologetic face. A locksmith. Of course. When a liar loses access, he hires someone to make the door the villain. Mark pointed at the keypad like it had personally betrayed him. The locksmith nodded, stepped closer and raised his hand toward my lock. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I pressed one button and spoke through the doorbell speaker, calm as a museum tour guide. Hi. Homeowner here. That work isn't authorized. The locksmith froze like I just turned on the lights in a movie theater. Mark looked up at the camera. Eyes sharp, face pulled tight. Evelyn, don't do this. Don't do what? I asked, still polite. Stop a stranger from breaking into my house? The locksmith cleared his throat. Ma'am, he said he lived here. He doesn't, I said. And if you touch that lock, you'll be billing the wrong person. Silence. Snow. Mark's cheeks went red in the cold. The locksmith muttered something about needing documentation and backed away like my front porch had become contagious. Mark leaned toward the camera, voice low and furious. This is insane. I almost laughed. Insane was giving a woman fuzzy slippers as a calling card and thinking she'd respond with tears instead of a folder. I texted June. He brought a locksmith. On camera. Her reply came back fast. Perfect. Keep recording. When Mark finally left, he didn't walk away like a man who'd made a mistake. He walked away like a man who believed the world had wronged him. That was his real talent, turning consequences into victimhood. My phone buzzed again. Email from the lender. They'd attached a fraud packet and a short summary. The application had been submitted online from a location tied to a hotel Wi-Fi network downtown. No poetry. Just facts. I forwarded it to June, saved it to House, and then, because I like symmetry, I opened Tuesday's grocery receipt again. The snow warning banner was still there in the corner, like a watermark on my stupidity. The receipt didn't just show what I paid. It showed where the digital copy had been sent. Tessa, I hadn't helped a stranger. I'd helped a plan. My next notification came from Ryan. You should know she's panicking. I stared at the message, then typed, Why are you still talking to her? His reply was immediate, defensive. Because I want to get paid. Honest, ugly, useful. Then he sent a voice note, Tessa's voice, bright and irritated, like she was complaining about a late delivery. Mark said the appraisal is Thursday. After that, I'm done playing nice. Your wife won't even know what hit her. And don't worry, those slippers were worth it. My stomach dipped, but my mouth did something else. It smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was clean. Now I had her saying it, out loud, in her own voice, with the slippers in the sentence like a signature. I sent Ryan one line. Forward the original file. Not a screen recording. He replied, More money. I didn't argue. I didn't insult him. I sent exactly enough to keep him cooperating, and not enough to make him feel powerful. Then I did something Mark never saw coming. I called the grocery store. Not to complain, not to be dramatic, to request a copy of the receipt detail for my records. The way a woman with money and a calm voice can request almost anything without raising alarms. They emailed it within the hour. And there it was again, Tuesday, snow warning, my payment, Tessa's email. One simple act of kindness now stapled to a fraud attempt, a hotel network, a doorbell video, and a locksmith who'd just met my voice. By late afternoon, Mark tried a new approach. He sent flowers. No note, just a delivery like bribery with petals. Then he texted, Can we talk like adults? I looked at the bouquet, then at my evidence folder, and I typed back, Adults don't hire locksmiths to fix their lies. 3 minutes later, my doorbell app chimed again. Motion at the front door. The camera loaded, and there she was, Tessa, standing in the snow like she'd rehearsed it, a folder tucked under her arm, and fuzzy slippers on her feet, bold as a confession. I didn't move. I didn't open the door. I just watched. Because waiting wasn't passive anymore. Waiting was the trap. The doorbell alert hit my phone like a cold slap. My screen still flashed snow warning at the top, like weather could file a complaint. On the screen, Tessa stood on my porch in fresh snow, a manila folder hugged to her chest, and she had the nerve to wear the fuzzy slippers, white, plush, loud, like my front step was hers by appointment. I didn't open the door. I tapped the speaker. Leave the folder on the mat. She tilted her head, all sweetness. Evelyn, I'm here to pay you back for the groceries. And to clear up a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I repeated. With my lock and your slippers. Her smile strained. Please, this is important. Matt, I said, then walk away. She crouched, set the folder down with careful hands, and stepped back like she'd just delivered a gift basket. Then she turned and left, the fuzzy slippers stamping little half-moons into the snow. When the porch was empty, I cracked the door, pulled the folder in, and locked it again. Gloves on. Not because paper bites, because I was done touching their story with my bare hands. At my kitchen island, I opened it. 3 items. 3 choices they'd made for me. A printed appointment sheet for Thursday, home value review, my address typed in bold, like the house belonged to whoever typed fastest. A lender authorization form with my name and a signature that looked like someone practiced cursive in a moving car. It wasn't my handwriting. My real signature has lived through boardrooms. And a crooked sticky note on top. HVAC code isn't working. Use the side door. Side door. That wasn't romance, that was a map. I photographed everything, slid the originals into a sleeve, and called June. She answered on the first ring. Tell me you didn't open the door. I opened it for paper, I said, not people. Good. Her voice sharpened. Email me the scans now. That authorization is fraud, not marriage drama. Fraud. While I sent the scans, another email from the lender landed in my inbox. Confirmation of the hold, plus a note that the online request came through a downtown hotel network. No feelings. Just facts. I forwarded that too. If Mark wanted to turn my life into paperwork, I was going to make sure the paperwork turned on him. I saved everything to my house folder, then forwarded it to my second email, the one Mark didn't know existed. Privacy is underrated until it pays your legal bills. June texted back. I'm filing for exclusive possession today. Process server will deliver to his office lobby. Of course she picked the lobby. June believed humiliation should be tasteful and well lit. Mark texted me before noon. Why isn't the code working? No hello, no concern. Just entitlement with punctuation. I replied with one sentence. Safety update. Check your email. Then I turned on continuous recording for my doorbell camera, because if my husband wanted to keep performing, I wanted the full footage. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed with a new clip. Mark on my porch again, coat zipped up, face tight. He punched the keypad once, twice, nothing. He called me. I let it ring. He stared at the camera like it had personally betrayed him. Not guilty, not sorry. Scared. Because somewhere downtown, in a glass lobby full of strangers who looked like they belonged to places he'd just been handed papers explaining a simple truth. He couldn't borrow against my home. He couldn't enter it. He couldn't fix this with a locksmith. And Thursday, his precious Thursday, was still coming. So was I. Thursday arrived dressed in snow and arrogance. Mark had been so obsessed with the appraisal, you'd think a stranger was coming to rate his personality. He'd said routine, like it was a spell. Like if he repeated it enough, the house would sign itself over out of boredom. I let him believe that. At 9:10 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion at front door. The camera loaded, and there he was, Mark, standing with a man in a sensible coat holding a clipboard. An appraiser. Mark pointed at my door like he was introducing the place to its future owners. He looked proud. That's what got me. Proud. Like betrayal was an investment strategy. The appraiser stepped forward and rang the bell. I didn't answer. I watched. After a few seconds, the appraiser glanced at his phone, then turned toward Mark with the polite impatience of a professional who hates drama but loves schedules. Mark forced a laugh and tried the keypad. Nothing. The appraiser frowned. Mark tried again, harder, like the lock might respond to tone. Still nothing. I could practically hear Mark's thoughts from my kitchen. This isn't how this was supposed to go. Because it wasn't. I had already called the appraisal office. I had already placed the hold, and June had already filed what needed filing. This wasn't a home value review anymore. It was a performance review. The appraiser took a step back. "Sir," he said, voice calm, "I can't enter without the homeowner's authorization. My office noted a fraud concern on this address." Mark's face shifted, fast, from confident husband to offended customer. "Fraud?" he repeated. "That's ridiculous. My wife." The appraiser lifted a hand. "I'm not here to mediate. I'm here to appraise. And I'm leaving." Mark stepped closer, voice rising just enough to be embarrassing, but not enough to be honest. "Listen, there's been a misunderstanding. She's emotional. Emotional. The word men use when facts don't obey them." I hit the doorbell speaker. "Hi," I said, calm as a weather report. "Homeowner here." Both men froze. Mark's head snapped toward the camera. "Please note," I continued, "any appointment tied to my address is canceled, and any documents submitted under my name were submitted without my authorization." "Thank you." The appraiser looked visibly relieved, a professional who had just been handed permission to exit a mess. "I'll note that," he said. "Have a good day, ma'am." He turned and walked back down my steps, clipboard tucked under his arm like he was carrying common sense away from my marriage. Mark stayed. Of course he did. He stared at the camera with a face that said, "How dare you refuse to be fooled?" Then his phone buzzed. I saw him glance down, his shoulders tightened. He'd gotten June's email, the one I told him to check, because June didn't just file, June delivered. Mark read for a few seconds, then looked up again, eyes sharp, mouth tight. He called me. I didn't answer. He called again. Still no. Finally he texted, "We need to talk, now." I texted back, "We can talk in daylight, in public. Bring the folder." 2 minutes later, a different alert hit my phone. Not motion. Not snow. A message from Ryan. "She's at the cafe, with the slippers. She thinks she's collecting." I stared at it, then felt something I hadn't felt in days. Amusement. Tessa had been bold enough to leave paperwork on my porch, bold enough to wear fuzzy slippers like a badge, and now she was going to a cafe in broad daylight, thinking she was the one holding the cards. I grabbed my coat, my phone, and the printed scans June had prepared. I didn't bring anger. Anger is loud. I brought documentation. Because if Mark thought Thursday was the day he took my house, he was about to learn a new definition of home value. It's not what a stranger writes on a clipboard. It's what you lose the moment you think you can steal from a woman who keeps receipts. The cafe was all glass and soft lighting, expensive enough to make bad behavior look tasteful. I arrived early and chose a table where I could see the door and the street. Daylight. Witnesses. The holy trinity of consequences. Ryan texted me a seat description like he was a bouncer at a very depressing club. Back corner. She has the slippers on. Of course she did. Tessa sat with her legs tucked under her chair, fuzzy slippers peeking out like a signature. In front of her was a laptop, an iced latte, and the manila folder she'd left on my porch, now opened like she expected it to bloom into ownership. Across from her sat Ryan, looking bored and hungry in the way men look when they've decided their morals have a price. I slid into the seat beside them, like I'd been invited to my own robbery. Tessa's smile snapped into place. "Evelyn?" "Hi," I said, setting my phone on the table. "Nice slippers." Her eyes flicked down. "They're warm." "So is fraud," I said lightly, "but nobody recommends it." Ryan snorted. He tried to hide it by coughing, which was adorable in a pathetic way. Tessa straightened. "I came to return the money you spent on my groceries, and to explain." "Save it," I said. "I've already seen the doorbell footage." Her face tightened. "That could be anyone." "Sure," I said, "and the lock logs wrote your name out of boredom." I opened my folder, not the one she carried, mine. Printed scans. Screenshots. The lender hold confirmation. The fraud packet summary. 1 page at a time, clean and calm. Tessa glanced at the first page, then the second, and her posture changed. Not guilt. Strategy. "I think you're misunderstanding," she said. "Mark told me the house was his. He said you were fine with it." "Mark also says he's dead asleep while opening my door at 3:02 a.m., I replied. "He has a gift." Ryan leaned back, watching Tessa like he was watching a stock drop. Tessa reached for her laptop. "I'm not trying to take anything from you. I'm just what?" I asked. Just using my name on lender forms? Just leaving instructions in my mudroom? Just wearing slippers on my porch like you're the homeowner? Her cheeks colored. You paid my groceries. You were kind. I thought you'd understand. I laughed, quiet, sharp. That's not kindness. That's a receipt. And I do understand. I understand you thought rich women are soft. Ryan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked at me, then at Tessa. My turn, he said suddenly. Tessa's head snapped toward him. Ryan? He held up his phone. You told me you were done playing nice after Thursday. You told Mark the wife wouldn't know what hit her. You said the slippers were worth it. Tessa's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The cafe around us kept humming with quiet conversations, completely unaware that a small war was happening at table 12. Ryan turned the phone toward me. You want the original file? It's yours, paid. I gave him a look that said, good boy, but with legal consequences. Then I slid my phone across the table and hit play. Mark's voice filled the space between our cups and our lies. Thursday is appraisal. After that, we're set. She won't even know. Tessa went still. Ryan's eyes widened a fraction, like he'd known Mark was trash, but hadn't realized how confidently. Tessa tried to recover. That's out of context. Everything looks out of context when you're caught in it, I said. The door chimed. Mark walked in. He stopped when he saw us. Me, Tessa, Ryan, like he'd just discovered his two lies had scheduled lunch together. He approached, forcing a smile. Evelyn, can we not do this here? I looked up at him. Do what? Talk like adults? His smile twitched. Tessa spoke first, breathy and furious. You said it was yours. Mark's eyes darted, calculating. Ryan stood. You said you weren't stupid, he told Tessa. Turns out you were just greedy. Tessa's face flashed with humiliation, then anger. Mark reached for my arm. Habit. Control. Ownership. I leaned back, just out of reach. Don't. His hand froze midair. I pulled one last sheet from my folder and placed it on the table like a dessert menu. A notice from June, exclusive possession filed. Mark's access terminated. A date to retrieve his belongings, supervised. Mark stared at it as if the paper had slapped him. This is insane, he hissed. No, I said, voice calm. This is paperwork. Then I stood, zipped my coat, and looked at all three of them like I'd finally found the correct angle for a messy photo. Tessa, I added, thanks for the slippers. They did their job. Mark's mouth opened, but no lie came fast enough. I walked out into the snow, feeling lighter than I had in years. Because the house wasn't just a building anymore, it was a boundary. And Mark had just learned what happens when you try to borrow against a boundary. 2 days later, the snow finally stopped pretending. Mark's pickup was scheduled for Saturday at noon. Not a conversation, a window, a list, a neutral third party. The kind of structure he always claimed to love, just not when it applied to him. At 11:58, my doorbell camera pinged. Mark stood outside, shoulders hunched. Behind him was Tessa, bold as ever, wearing the fuzzy slippers again, like my porch was her stage. The supervisor spoke into the camera. We're here for the pickup. I pressed the speaker. Approved items only. The door opened, not for Mark, for the process. Inside, the house smelled faintly like citrus cleaner and calm. Warm light sat on the hardwood like it had always belonged there. Mark stepped in anyway, moving carefully, like he expected the walls to argue back. He used to walk through my home like a man who owned my patience. Today he looked like a man who'd finally met a boundary. He headed straight for the office. The supervisor reminded him about the list. My laptop is on that list, Mark snapped. It is, I said through the speaker. So is your coat, not my patience. He grabbed the laptop, a few folders, and tried to move fast, like speed could make this less humiliating. Tessa hovered in the entryway, eyes scanning my home like she was shopping. Then Mark opened the closet near the mudroom and froze. The hook was empty. The scarf with "Sokso" gone. The note gone. Every little souvenir of their confidence had vanished, as if the house refused to remember them. The only thing left was a small cardboard box on the bench. Mark stared at it. What's that? He opened it. Inside were the fuzzy slippers, clean, folded, placed like an exhibit. On top sat one sheet of paper, printed in plain black letters. Return to sender. Tessa's mouth twisted. Are you kidding me? Petty, she snapped toward my camera. You're being petty. I let the silence sit long enough to sting. Then I spoke, calm. No, I said. I'm being accurate. Mark looked up at the camera, eyes wet with something that wasn't love. It was the panic of a man realizing he'd been living off access. "Evelyn," he said, "we can fix this." I laughed, soft, not cruel. The kind of laugh you make when you've stopped bargaining. "You tried to borrow against my name," I said. "You tried to enter my home with a code you labeled HVAC. You hired a locksmith like the door was the problem. You don't want to fix us. You want to fix your access." The supervisor checked his watch. 10 minutes. Mark packed what he could without making a scene. Every item he carried looked like a confession. At the door, he paused. "You won't even talk to me?" I tilted my head. "We're talking right now." He flinched. Then he stepped outside into the cold. Tessa followed, slippers squeaking in the snow like a joke that had run too long. The door clicked shut behind them, quiet and final. Later, I opened Tuesday's grocery receipt one last time. Snow warning banner, total amount, Tessa's email, the whole domino line, neatly itemized. I deleted the email from my inbox. Not because I was erasing proof, I had backups. I deleted it because I didn't want a souvenir. I wanted a life. People think revenge is loud. They picture screaming, broken plates, mascara running like a tragedy. Mine looked like a folder, a timestamp, and a door that finally learned the word no. I poured a glass of water, watched the last of the snow melt down my window, and smiled. The storm had passed, and this time, so had he. That night, the house sounded different. Not quieter, just honest. No second footsteps pacing behind mine. No sudden phone buzzes that made my stomach brace. The heat clicked on, the wood settled, and for the first time in a long time, my home didn't feel like a stage set for someone else's story. I made soup the way my mother used to. Slow, practical, not romantic. Carrots, garlic, a squeeze of lemon at the end, like a small act of faith. I ate at the kitchen island with one lamp on, watching snow melt down the window in thin, clear lines. It reminded me that endings don't have to be loud to be real. I didn't feel victorious in the way people expect. I felt returned to myself, like I'd been holding my breath for years and only just noticed. Before bed, I checked the lock app out of habit. Everything was stable. Everything was mine. I turned off the porch light and stood there a moment longer than necessary, letting the dark feel like rest instead of danger. Then my phone lit up. One notification, soft and ordinary. A smart home alert from a different sensor I'd forgotten was linked to my account, the guest bathroom. At first I thought it was a glitch, but when I opened the thumbnail, I saw something white tossed over the edge of a hamper. Just a corner, just enough texture to look familiar. Not slippers, a wet towel. No faces, no shouting, no explanation, just an object that didn't belong where it landed, and the timestamp sitting underneath it like a quiet dare. I closed the app, placed my phone face down, and smiled into the dark. Some people think they can keep leaving props behind and call it an accident. I've learned better. I sleep fine now because I don't chase lies. I collect proof. I didn't win by yelling. I won by documenting. The slippers were just the first object that told the truth. If you want more cases where proof does the talking, tap one of the videos on your screen. As for me, there's another item sitting in my home that doesn't belong there. A wet towel. One timestamp. And papers that don't wait for morning. You'll see that one soon. And when it drops, you'll understand why I didn't stop at locks. I went straight to filings.